Hello, I'm Tina Cover, and I'm here with Anya Migdal, who is the translator of Aetherial Worlds by Tatyana Tolstaya.
Hi.
Anya, let me ask you, first of all, you are a writer as well as a translator. Tell me a little bit about how the two creative processes compare to one another.
Well, the obvious differences, of course, are that as an author, you're on your own. You have this blank page and you can go in any direction you choose. And as a translator, you are recreating somebody else's vision, and you obviously have a lot less freedom, a lot less latitude. Although as an author, I do find that your freedom to choose gets narrower and narrower as you progress in the story. You don't really can't just go in any direction. But as far as similarities, for me anyway, I feel like what I'm doing in both cases is problem solving using a very similar set of tools. And for me, those tools go beyond the written word because of my background as a musician, as an actor. So to me, the musicality of a phrase is very important, the rhythm of it. I like to read the whole thing from beginning to end out loud to make sure it sounds in a way that it's congruent with the meaning and the atmosphere, if that makes sense. Trippingly on the tongue, as Shakespeare said it. And then the actor in me is allergic to stilted dialogue, and so I like to make sure any dialogue that I write or translate has to be actable. And of course, that's not always possible, but it has to feel as close to real as possible. And the requirements for obviously for a play or a movie and piece of literature are different when it comes to dialogue, but there's still a sense of realness that I really I spend a lot of time thinking about that. I guess both things, both writing and translating, are satisfying in a similar way for me. Like they access similar parts of me. But translating is harder.
Right, thank you. So the book is a collection of short pieces, essays, and to my mind, it has a very Russian quality, the writing, and just the manner of sort of looking at the world. Now, you are Russian American. You were born in Russia and came to America as a child. Did you find that the style or the content resonated with you personally? Did it feel very familiar, or did it feel more alien since you've been in the States for so long?
So yes, to both, because there are a lot of elements in a lot of things that Tatyana talks about that are instantly recognizable, I think, to anybody who either lived in Russia or who was born there, or who knows the culture. But at the same time, she's a different generation. Plus, she talks about things that kind of happened even before her time. So there's a lot that I had to look up and a lot that I had to ask her about, which thankfully I had that opportunity. And some of it, I suppose, felt unfamiliar but not alien, because the Russian spirit is very particular. And I think once you know it, you know it. It hasn't changed much, in my opinion, in the past 200 years, from what I've read.
I think you're right. I do think you're right. Well, you mentioned that you were able to ask Tatyana about certain things, certain points, and so you have a personal relationship with her.
Yeah.
How did you find that affected the process of translation? Did you work closely with her, or did you try to work things out for yourself most of the time and then have her look at it when it was mostly finished?
Well, so Aetherial Worlds was my first book length translation. I'd done some plays before and some smaller, like little short stories or little essays, but this was the sort of the most the biggest in terms of scope translation project that I had done. But it didn't happen all at once. It was first she asked me to translate this. The first story she asked me to translate was Smoke and Shadows, which I did and got published, and then she kept giving me more stories. So as I progressed, as I translated more and more of her stuff, I became more, I guess, sure of my ability to get her voice across. And I have known her for such a long time, so I felt like I had a pretty good handle on her voice to begin with, just knowing what makes her laugh and how she speaks. But I did consult her quite a bit, and also because, as you mentioned, this whole text is very Russian, and sometimes it was so Russian that it just, I think an English speaker or an American reader wouldn't have a frame of reference for it. And explaining things, adding an explanation into the text would break up the beauty of the writing. So I really worked hard on trying to find parallels in English. And I couldn't do that without asking her. Obviously, I had to involve her. There's one, I can't remember which story this is, but she compares the sky to an Ayvazovsky painting, and not most American readers wouldn't know who that is, but the moment you say Turner, they're like, oh, and they get the imagery. And so there's stuff like that I suggested to her, and thankfully she's very game, and also, obviously if things didn't work, then she would say no, but also she speaks English well enough where I can explain the different nuances of different choices to her. So again, I thought I was very fortunate to have her as my accomplice in this, someone I can, and in the end, I probably, as I said, I like to read the whole thing out loud, and I probably read the whole book to her out loud so she could listen to it as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, did you have a favorite of the pieces in the book?
Oh, it's hard to pick favorites, but I think to me, The Invisible Maiden has to be. Now, there are a lot of other stories I absolutely love in this collection, but The Invisible Maiden, to me, is just this perfectly conceived, perfectly executed short story that is the essence of Tatyana's writing. She has this. She's not so much about plot or dialogue so much. It's more about like recreating an atmosphere or a place. And I feel like her writing always makes me feel nostalgia for this place that I didn't even know about until she described it. And I think she does that so beautifully in the story. And in addition, there's this plot and all these different characters, and it all comes together in a gentle way, if that makes sense. It's not like it's not a detective story, but it all just beautifully kind of resolves itself. And the writing is funny and gorgeous and shocking at times. I love that story.
For sure. It was my favorite too, actually. I just find I know what you mean about the nostalgia. Felt the same way. And just these tiny touches of, I remember there was one bit where she talks about, rather than just saying blue bushes, I think she says twilight colored, and there's just something so evocative about that. And that's just one example out of literally thousands in the book.
Yeah, she is incredibly good, I think, at creating a very three-dimensional picture. Like you can feel it, you can sense, you can smell it, you can touch it, you can see it. It's, I think it's a rare gift.
But you conveyed that in English, which says a lot for your ability.
Well, thank you.
And it was your first book in translation, which is,
yes.
It's incredible to be so successful on your first go.
It's all going to be downhill from here, probably. But
well,
yeah, feel very fortunate.
Have you thought about what you might like to do in the future? Do you have any particular books or authors that you'd love to translate, or what would your dream project be?
Well, once I finish the thing that I'm working on right now, my short story collection, my own short stories, I do want to actually come back to translation. As far as what I'd love to do, there's certain classics that I would love to get a chance to do. Nobody really needs another translation of Chekhov's plays or Master and Margarita, but nonetheless, I would love to do that just for me, especially because I feel like Chekhov is never as funny and as loose as it ought to be. For whatever reason, that never comes across to me in English. As a kid, I used to love this book called The Three Fat Men by Yuri Alyosha, which has been translated, but I'd love to do that. And then my dream would be to find an unknown to the English-speaking world anyway author, and to bring them here to translate, to discover them for myself, and then to help the English-speaking market, as it were, to discover the author as well.
Oh, publishers take note. This amazing translator at your disposal, and many congratulations on.
Thank you.